and welcome back to the Worcester Senior Center Stay Connected programming station, Channel 192. My name is Linda Winsek Moore, and I am the Manager of Senior Services and Education at the Worcester Senior Center. Joining us today is nurse attorney Kathleen Summers from Generations Law Group. With over 25 years of legal experience, Kathleen concentrates her legal practice on crisis planning, Medicaid and long-term care planning, estate planning, and guardianship. She's the go-to expert on helping clients and their families navigate the legal healthcare worlds when a crisis occurs. She specializes in crisis management and often supports families who are unable to provide frequent oversight of a loved one's care. Kathleen is often sought out by professionals to serve as an advisor to local hospitals and be a member of several boards in the community. Kathleen currently serves as Vice President of the Massachusetts chapter of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. Today, Attorney Summers' discussion revolves around our pets. Don't forget about Fido. Attorney Summers will discuss how to make sure your pets are cared for if you are unable to care for them yourself. As a pet owner, you will learn what you need to think about if your pet becomes sick for an extended period of time, who should you ask to help you care for Fido and Fluffy, what you can and cannot do legally, and tips and resources to make Fido and Fluffy are happy and healthy will also be given. Welcome, Attorney Summers. And remember, stay safe, stay hydrated, and stay connected by watching the Worcester Senior Center Stay Connected programming on Channel 192.
Thank you, Linda, very much, and thank you so much to the Worcester Senior Center for inviting me to provide you with this programming. So today, as Linda said, we're going to talk about caring for our pets, and that conversation is going to be not only what you can legally do, particularly after you've passed away, to make sure that your pets are taken care of, but sometimes more importantly, what you can do while you're still alive. But if something were to happen and you can't care for your pets either permanently or even on a short-term basis. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now and share with you our presentation about what about Fido? And what do we do in order to be able to make sure that our pets are taken care of? So don't forget about Fido and your other pets, because as we all know, there are many types of pets that we may have and many different life expectancies for those pets. So let's go ahead and get this going for you. So just some facts, just to kind of begin, give you all a little bit of a background about pet ownership nationally. Between 2017 and 2018, in the U.S., we had shown that there's 68% of U.S. households have some pet or another, whether that be a dog, a cat, turtles, parrots, birds, a whole range of household pets really fall into this category. And one of the things that we've found during COVID-19 is that pet ownership has actually been on the rise, with more people being home and having opportunity to have pets as part of their lives. So really, pets are a really important part of many of our lives, and for many of us, they are an extended part of our family. And so we want to make sure that we've done some thoughtful planning for them as well as anyone else within our households. There's a lot of reasons why people own pets, and I'll go through a few of them, and most of you probably know. Oftentimes they help us to increase our physical level of activity, getting outside, being able to do things with our pets. During non-COVID times, they actually really help with socialization as well, to be able to help to get us, again, out in the community socializing with others, but even at home to be able to provide us with some additional socialization, someone there as some support while we're at home, and really in a lot more isolation these days. They can help but strengthen our community, whether we're non-COVID times, being able to go out, meet with other people who may have like pets, But even in today's world where we are more isolated, being able to find some resources online that might help you build a little bit of more of a community around pet concerns, about how to help deal with your pets, etc. There are many things out there online to help build community even while we're at home. And for many of us, having a pet can help us feel more supported while we're at home and more safe. You know, people think about particularly dogs, for instance, and having a dog who may vocalize with barking, etc., when there are people at the door, when there's some unusual activity happening around our homes. And so they can oftentimes give us a very strong feeling of support and safety. Some of the things that all pet owners should think about, regardless of what type of pet you have. Again, thinking about what happens after you've passed away is always something that we want people to consider, but also thinking about what happens if you become sick for any extended period of time. How do you go about making sure that other people know that you have a pet at home so somebody will intervene and make sure that that pet is taken care of? So some things for you to think about. Who's going to care for your pet should you be out of your home for any extended period of time? And so you want to make sure that you talk with those people ahead of time and that that individual or individuals is willing to step forward for you. Make sure they know how to enter your home should they need to go in while you're not there to make sure that your pet is taken care of. And make sure that they know about your pet. We'll talk more about that. Particular, what's the schedule for your pet? Who's going to be responsible for making sure that your pet is fed and walked and all those important things? Talking about what to do when you have passed away and thinking about who's going to be responsible for your pet after your death. How are you going to make sure that that person, number one, is willing to take your pet? Will they need to move them to a new environment? Will you provide them with monies to take care of your pet after your passing? You also really want to think about the special needs of your pet. Do they have medication requirements or special diets, special foods that need to be provided for them? And how are you going to communicate that information to somebody who may be taking care of your pet? And also, are there behavioral issues that someone needs to be aware of when they're going to be dealing with your pet? Maybe your pet has a special toy that they like to have everywhere. Is your pet crate trained, for instance, or not crate trained? And making sure that whoever is going to be caring for your pet understands these special behavioral issues. We'll talk a little bit more about how to make sure that there's clarity around all of these questions. This really gives you a beginning point of things to think about when it comes to providing care for your pet. Who's going to take care of them should you become sick? Who's going to be able to take care of them after your passing? Do they have any kind of special needs that need to be addressed? And do they have any kind of particular behavioral issues that need to be clarified for someone? So one of the first things that we often hear is, who should I ask to be in this important position of taking care of my pet? Whether it be when I have become sick or need to leave my house for some kind of extended period on an emergency basis, or certainly after death. So one of the first places that people usually go to are family and friends, and looking to have a family member or a friend be willing to agree to take the pet. But one of the things you want to be careful of is don't rely on just what do you think? Will you take my pet? And not really being clear with that person that you are going to ask them from a legal standpoint to take your pet and going to provide them with detailed information about your pet should they have to step into your shoes. So make sure you've got it clarified who's going to end up being responsible for your pet. Sometimes people think, well, my veterinarian, I'm just going to go ahead and leave my veterinarian responsible for finding a home for my pet. Many veterinarians will not do that. That's an awful lot to ask of them, and that's not usually a service that they provide. You could talk with your veterinarian about that, but it's not a given that they will automatically provide that service. But they can be a very good resource for information for you about shelters that may be in the area that may take your pet, whether it be on a temporary basis or a permanent basis for placement, how those shelters work, whether they are what we call a no-kill shelter, so that your pet would not be euthanized should a new home not be found for them. You really want to think about those things and talk with the veterinarian to find out what resources may be available in the community to be able to help should you not have a family or friend who's willing to assist you by taking your pet. Sometimes people automatically put that they want their pet to go to one of the local shelters or one of the local humane societies. Again, oftentimes these types of organizations, facilities are good for short-term placement. So just for an emergency kind of basis to get you through a hump, you've had an illness and you need a hospitalization but are expecting to come back home. But there are no guarantees that the shelter will be able to place your dog or cat or other animal, that they'll be able to find a new home for them. And there's no guarantee that they'll have room to take your pet in that emergency situation. And so you really want to have a conversation with them to find out what the expectations are of the services that they can provide, what the cost is for those types of services, and making sure that you plan to be able to cover those costs both in an emergency situation for you or certainly after your death. So one of the things we often hear is when someone has caregivers coming into their home, one of to make sure that you clarify with any caregiver you may be receiving care from whether they are allowed to provide these kinds of services and willing to do that. Don't assume that any caregiver coming into your home who's providing care for you will also provide care for your pet. They may not be allowed to, or they may not want to be able to do those services for you. Should you find that you can't get those kinds of services through your caregiving organization, you may want to contract or make some kind of an arrangement with someone who may stop in on a regular basis for you, whether that be daily or weekly, to check on those kinds of things and to provide you with services around emptying a cat litter box, again, changing your bird cage, the kinds of things that we have to do regularly to make sure that our pets are staying healthy and are well taken care of while we're at home. The key is not to just assume that a caregiver who's coming in for you is also going to be able to provide care for your pet. So what are some of the things that you can do legally? Again, a lot of times we worry about what's going to happen to our pet after I've passed away. Certainly, in your last will and testament, you can provide specific kinds of directions on how to provide care for your animal and who will be responsible for providing that care. So you want to make sure in the document that you're very clear who you have asked and who's willing to step forward and provide care for your animals after you have passed. You want to name that person, and I oftentimes recommend people also consider an alternative to that person, just in case they're either unavailable or unwilling to fill the responsibilities. You want to give them really broad discretion if you can, because you don't know what kinds of things may need to be done for your animal. Maybe they need a different placement than with that individual themselves. Maybe you want to leave them with the ability to be able to find another appropriate home for them. You also want to make sure that you have considered providing them with some kind of compensation, whether it be monies that will help to provide care for the pet as time goes on, to be able to say, I'm giving this person a certain amount of money and asking them to use that money to provide for my pet, to make sure that my pet is well taken care of. Because as we all know, taking care of a pet can have expense associated with it. Daily expense around food and other items the pet may need, And things like veterinary services can end up adding up quickly for someone. And you don't want to end up giving someone the responsibility of caring for your loved pet without also providing them some compensation to do so. But one of the things to know with wills is that wills can take a little bit of time to get them activated by the courts. It can take multiple months to actually get someone in that position of authority, and there may be a delay for them being able to access the funds that they need to provide for your pet. And a will only provides for the pet after death. So the instructions that you may put in your will only become effective after your passing. It doesn't help to provide for your pet should you still be alive, but you are unable to care for them for some reason, whether it be short-term or long-term. Another possibility here in Massachusetts is actually to create what's called a pet trust. So we aren't able here in Massachusetts to leave money directly to our pets, so we can't provide for Fido directly. But what we can do is create a trust for Fido's benefit or for any other animals that we may have. And typically, again, these kinds of trusts are put in place. They can provide for immediate direction, so even while you're still alive, they can instruct whoever you have asked to be responsible for the trust and for your pets to be able to access funds right away and to not have it just effective upon your death. Again, you want to think about who's going to be the trustee of this trust. Who's really going to be responsible for managing this trust should you become incompetent or incapable of being able to provide care for your pet or after your death? How do you want to arrange for the care of your pet? Do you want someone responsible for managing the monies that you may leave in that pet trust for your pet and someone else to be responsible for providing the day-to-day care? Or will that be the same person? It's completely up to you. You can also provide some specific directions in that trust. Outline maybe important issues that may affect your pet, and be able again to provide how that pet is going to be cared for or should be cared for. We want to try to make it as broad as possible. So again, we don't want to be too specific about what your expectations are for care, because you can tie the hands of the person who you've asked to be in that position. We prefer them to have some broad ability to do what they believe is important to provide good care for your pet. And another document that you want to look at to make sure that it provides for your pets, if possible, is your durable power of attorney. This is a document that you name somebody to step into your shoes, to be able to manage your affairs, everything but healthcare decision-making for you, should you become incompetent or incapacitated. And in this document, you can also ask this individual to provide for your pets, or have them name someone else who will be responsible for taking care of your pets should you be away from them for a long period of time. So legally, there's several different approaches you can take. Certainly the last will and testament will help to manage things after you have passed away, but it won't help to take care of things while you're still alive, but if you're away from your pets for a period of time. That's where the pet trust and the durable power of attorney can be of help to make sure that your pets are properly thought of. Remember, some types of pets live for a very long time. And so particularly when we're talking about turtles, types of birds, horses, other animals that have a very long extended lifetime, you may find that you're only their caregiver for part of their life, and making sure that you have provided for next steps for that animal, again, upon your death, or should you no longer be able to provide care for them, is really important. So one of the things that we always want to look at is, should you be leaving money that's earmarked for the care of your animal? Like I talked about before, it can be very expensive to provide care for a pet. be it the day-to-day needs of that pet, particularly if a pet is on some kind of a special diet. Food can be expensive for them, and things like paying for shelter and for veterinary care for the pet can become very expensive. So you really want to think carefully about potentially leaving some form of money to the individual who's going to be providing for your care. How much you're going to leave is going to depend on a lot of things. Your wishes, what is important to you in terms of the care of that pet? If you have wishes that are going to require funding, you want to consider those as part of the decision to leave money for the caregiver. The type of pet you have is going to be really important as well. As I said, some pets have a much longer expectancy for life than others. And so if you're dealing with a pet who has a long life expectancy, leaving a sum of money to make sure that that life expectancy is covered and that quality of life is considered for your pet is important. And then the special needs of your pet is another thing to consider. If they have special dietary requirements, if they're on medication, then leaving money to make sure that those needs are properly met is going to be very, very important. Again, we can put these things into a will, we can put them into a pet trust, but we can't leave money directly to the pet. Unlike, I think it was Leona Helmsley in New York City, who famously did that and left money to one of her dogs. So some of the things to do ahead of time and for you to think about in terms of important details, want to make sure that you have a clear place, that you have written down all of the important details surrounding your pet. Thinking about things like their feeding habits. When do they like to eat? Do they eat in the morning and in the evening? Do they just get a meal one time a day? What types of food do they like? As you all know, who have dogs, cats, switching their diet without, willy-nilly can really cause problems for the dog or the cat. So making sure that you have these things properly documented for whoever may be stepping into your shoes. Make sure that you have your veterinarian identified. And if you don't have a veterinarian, I highly recommend that you develop a relationship with a veterinarian, because it is important that there is a health history on your dog or cat or other animal available, and that you have a relationship with a vet who can work with someone who may need to step into your shoes to provide care for your animal. So get their information written down and have copies of the medical records. At least make sure that you have it documented when the last visits were for your pet. So again, person stepping into your shoes has a starting point to where to begin with things. If your pet has medical conditions, if they're on medications, you want to make sure that those are well known and documented for whoever may be coming into you to care for your pet. Making sure you've got their favorite toy identified. I have a golden retriever at home, and she inevitably always goes and grabs her favorite toy when someone comes to the door. That's her safety net. She loves that toy, and it's her go-to for any kind of changes in her environment. And so it's really important for her to make sure that she's got that toy available to her. Also want to make sure that whoever's going to be caring for your pet knows what their favorite activities are. Maybe your animal loves to take long hikes. Maybe they're not so much of a walker and that's not something they enjoy, but instead they love to go swimming in the local pond. Making sure that you've got that documented so that someone has a good understanding of what their pet's enjoyments are, and so that they can make sure that they continue those for them. And any kind of special quirks the pet may have. Maybe they're very frightened of loud noises, thunder, fireworks. That's a very common one that many of our pets deal with. And making sure that you have it documented as to whether there's medication that you use or some kind of technique that you use to help calm your animal in those circumstances. You may want to make sure that they understand if they use, a certain kind of of kitty litter, let's say, for your cat. That would be important to make sure that their routines stay the same as much as possible should you not be there to be able to keep those things going for them. Documenting that, having that in a clear place, and making sure that whoever you've asked to be in the position of caring for your pet knows where to find that information. Keep it up to date. Very, very important. And some of the resources for you to think about as you go about planning for your pets in the future. As I said, establishing a relationship with a local veterinarian and making sure that that veterinarian sees your pet on a regular basis, it goes a long, long way in making sure that somebody has a good health history on your pet and understands some of the concerns that may surround your pet. Your veterinarian also can be an incredibly important resource for you as you're looking to understand what's available out there and how you might go about appointing somebody to be responsible for your pet. Get to know the animal control in your town and understand what they can and can't do. Some animal control, some towns are more kind of pet friendly than others, and their animal control officers will do things that other towns may not do. So for instance, some animal control officers will go the extra mile and they have the ability to be able to help place a pet if necessary. Some animal control officers in towns don't have those resources and won't take on that responsibility. Identify pet sitters in the area. There are lots of them out there. The internet can be a great resource to be able to find pet sitters. And establishing a relationship with someone ahead of time is, again, critical if possible. Get to know somebody, make sure you're comfortable with them, and get them to know your pet so that they're able to step in if necessary. Sometimes pet sitters will also take the pets on short-term basis in emergencies. But again, you want to make sure that you've talked with them about that ahead of time and you've clarified that that may be a resource that you need. There are also charitable programs out there that help to provide homes for pets. You can find information about them, oftentimes again on the internet, but you want to have a conversation with them so that you understand any organization that you're dealing with. What types of services can they provide and can't they provide? And what are the expectations around the provision of those services? Do they expect you to make a gift to the organization to provide them with resources? You know, sometimes they can be as large as, expecting $10,000, $25,000 in terms of the pet, depending on the type of pet and the type of services you might be asking for. And so you want to talk with them ahead of time and understand what the expectations are. There's a few other organizations that we've listed here. Certainly the Schools of Veterinary Medicine, the Peace of Mind program is one that Purdue University puts out. Kansas City has a wonderful program as well for perpetual pet care that is out there. And again, there's a few with the Oklahoma City and with the one at Texas A&M that you can reach out to. They are in other states, but you could reach out to them and they could help you identify resources that might be more local for you. If you're having problems identifying who would be able to help manage your pets and what next steps might look like should you be unable to be there for your pet, either on an emergency basis or after your passing. I hope this has been very helpful to you. Taking care of our pets, they are, again, many times family members for us. And like any family member, making sure that if you're not there to be able to provide for them, that you have carefully thought out what next steps would look like, who will be in that position to help take care of them, and how that care will be funded is really critical to be a good pet owner. Wishing you well. Take care.
Thank you, Attorney Summers, for this very informative program. And remember, everyone, please stay safe, stay hydrated, and stay connected by watching Channel 192. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Sheriff Lou Evangelitis. We're actually in our sheriff's office here with our with Remy here, who's one of our first shelter dogs that was adopted, the first one from our program that I'm going to talk about for a minute. But really what I wanted to tell you was I've always loved dogs. We've had many in my family. They've always been shelter pets. And when I got elected sheriff, I dreamed about the idea of bringing a shelter program to the jail. And there's a lot of evidence to show that inmates benefit from having dogs around. So we started a partnership where we have dogs come in from a shelter. They work with the inmates for anywhere from three months or more necessary, and they provide care for the dog. They help train the dogs that have some slight behavioral issues, and then they're put up for adoption. And I'm really proud to say that we are moving on our 100th adopted dog in this program. We're 100 for 100. We've had incredible successes, but today we're here with Remy and Kathy Pelletier, who works with us, and her son Tim. And Remy was our very first dog that was adopted. So Kathy, why don't you just tell us how did you first see Remy, and how's he been for a family, part of your family?
Well, like you, Sheriff, we were excited when we heard the program was coming up, and I think one of the very first days that Remy came, of course I was over at work with Lisa, I couldn't wait to meet him, and there was just something about his eyes. I just fell in love with him. In our family, we were always dog people also, and we had lost a dog maybe 2 or 3 years previous, and we thought we were all done with pets. My oldest son was a senior in college, and this guy was going away to college. And probably a crazy time. Everybody was thinking, you're empty nesters, why are you doing this now? But I fell in love with him, and he brings us tremendous joy. We treat him like a family member. He's my third son. And he's just part of the family and happy to be with us, and he's really grown. And Tim, what do you have to say?
I think he's the best friend to have during the pandemic because while we're all kind of trapped inside, socially distanced, I know that between working from home and being at home all the time, well, I'm never alone because I have Remy here with me at my feet, snuggled up on the couch with me, going to go on walks with him. So he's really the best friend to have around. And so if you have the space, the best thing to do is get a shelter dog, give someone a home, and with Remy you'll find a best friend and a new family member. So I think it's one of the best things that you can do at this time.
Well, you guys could not have really put the program in a better light. And you got the first example we have of this wonderful program. This program helps adopt dogs. It helps the inmates learn to become better behaved, bonding with another animal, changes them as people. And our officers say the blocks have never been safer and calmer than when the dogs have arrived. So it's a wonderful program. I couldn't be more proud to have it, and we couldn't have had better spokesmen here to talk about the importance of adopting shelter pets. So again, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed meeting Remy.
Thank you.
Thank you.